This is Chapter 4, Lesson 4, Add and Subtract Unlike Fractions. So, before you can add two blank fractions, or fractions with different denominators, you have to rename one or both of the fractions so they have a common denominator. In those two blanks, you're going to write unlike fractions. So, add or subtract unlike fractions. To add or subtract fractions with different denominators, I first rename the fractions using the blank. You're going to write least common denominator in those three blanks. Okay? Or the LCD. Add or subtract as with blank fractions, as with like fractions, and if necessary, simplify that sum or difference. Okay? So I can use two different methods. I can either use a number line or I can use the LCD. So I want to find 1/2 plus 1/4. Notice that 2 and 4 are not like fractions, different denominators. So I need to change one or both so they have a common denominator. So method 1, I can use the number line. So I have 1/2 plus 1/4. Okay, so I can just simply draw it on the number line. The other method, which is the method I recommend using, is using the LCD. The least common denominator of 1/2 and 1/4 is 4. So I change 1/2. So 1 times 2 gives me 2. 2 times 2 gives me 4. So I get 2/4 plus 1/4. I didn't have to do anything to the 1/4. Okay. So 2/4 plus 1/4 equals 3/4. So using either method, 1/2 plus 1/4 equals 3/4. Okay. I want to find negative 2/3 minus 1/2. So method 1, I can use number line. So I start at 0. I go to negative 2/3, which is the same thing as negative 4/6, minus, so again, I'm going to the left, 1/2. And I get negative 7/6. Okay. So I'm going to use an LCD as my second method. So my LCD is 6. 3 times 2 gives me 6. 2 times 2 gives me 4. 2 times 3 gives me 6, so 1 times 3 gives me 3. Negative 4 minus 3 is negative 7, so I get negative 7/6, which equals negative 1 1/6. Okay, there are 2 try it problems below. Go ahead, pause the video, try them out, and when you're done, we will go over the answers together. Now that you've tried the try it problems, let's go over the answers together. The first one I have is add 1/6 plus 2/3, right in simplest form. Okay. All right, so the very first thing I want to do is I want to come up with a common denominator. So my LCD for 6 and 3 is 6. Okay. So 1/6 I didn't have to do anything to, right? I can just multiply everything by 1. And I get 1/6 still. Okay. 2/3. I need to multiply by 2. Whenever I multiply the denominator by, I have to multiply the numerator by. 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 2 gives me 6. So now I have 1/6 plus 4/6. Okay. I'm going to multiply, or I'm going to add my numerators together. 1 plus 4 gives me 5. So I get 5/6. Remember, keep your denominators the same. So when I add 1/6 plus 2/3, I get 5/6. Okay. Number 2 says subtract 5/8 minus 1/4, write in simplest form. So I have 5/8 minus 1/4. My LCD is 8. So 5/8 I didn't have to do anything to. I just multiplied straight across by 1. Okay. 1/4 I did have to change. I need to multiply by 2. Remember, whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. 4 times 2 is 8. 1 times 2 is 2. So now I have 5/8 minus 2/8. 5 minus 2 is 3. Denominator stays the same. So 5/8 minus 1/4 is 3/8. And that is the end of lesson 4.